Hi, and welcome to TV My Husband Hates. I'm Kat Sims.
And I'm Reagan Kempton.
And we are reality TV addicts?
Addicts, aficionados?
Ooh, I like that. Experts.
Experts.
Basically, we know our shit when it comes to reality TV.
100%.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to a special minisode of TV My Husband Hates. I am here with Reagan Kempton, as ever. How you doing?
I'm good. Hopefully this second recording of the same episode works a little bit better. I totally flummoxed this recording. We were supposed to have it out before the weekend, but I forgot to hit record, and we did an entire episode.
I wasn't even going to bring it up.
We might as well be honest.
Seeing as you did. No, I'm joking.
Yeah.
It's fine. This stuff happens. It's not like I haven't done stupid stuff, like delete the whole Pinterest account.
Yeah. Things happen. We're all good.
Let's not focus on the fucking fuck-ups that we do.
No.
Let's focus on the special content for this week's minisode, which we kind of, it's a little bit off-brand for us because actually we're going to be discussing The Last Dance, which is the documentary about Michael Jordan, and actually our husbands really fucking loved it.
Yes, they absolutely did. And it was kind of my husband's idea that we do it because he was like, this is coming up. I think it'll be really great. And it's a 30 for 30, so we would watch it anyways. But then I called you and was like, this is amazing. Hop on board.
And I did, because I do everything I'm told when I'm told. No questions asked. That's how this works, in case you didn't know. She tells me what to do, and I do it. But that aside, I have really enjoyed this documentary, and I've been telling people about it, and they're like, I'm just not into it. And I was like, I don't care if you've never watched a game of basketball. You don't need to know. I don't care even if you've never heard of Michael Jordan, although that would be weird. But regardless of whether you think you like sports or not, this is going to be a documentary you enjoy.
Absolutely. It's centered around the sports, but it's about so much more than that, about, personalities and group dynamics and fame and media, and it's got it all, man.
It has, and interestingly, because we fucked up the first recording, it's given me time to just do a little bit more reading, and I read today that it averaged 5.65 million views because it came out week by week. They did 2 episodes every week, which actually unseated Tiger King as the world's most in-demand documentary.
Wow, that's pretty incredible. Yeah, because
right?
it's actually not on Netflix here in the US yet. I'm sure it will be eventually, but they're still running it on ESPN. So ESPN kind of has the rights here because I think they did it in conjunction with Netflix. So here it's not on Netflix yet.
Well, I also read they did it to air alongside the NBA finals or something. I don't know.
I think that was probably the original thought, but
Yeah.
But everything's been canceled.
Blown out the water.
Yeah.
So first of all, I think it's worth talking about the way it's put together and the director's name, which I still don't know, despite all the
Jason Heyer.
Heyer. And for me, I think this was one of the most amazing things about the documentary, right? It was so beautifully put together.
Yeah, it really was. I loved the way, while the focus was the 98 Bulls championships, he did a lot of flashbacks of kind of the NBA as a whole, but from the late 70s to the 90s. You got to see most of Michael's early career, which I think really put it in context. You kind of knew the whole person before going into this, even if you had never paid attention before. Yeah,
there were loads of gorgeous sidebars that were really rich with kind of information, but never felt like it was extraneous or you never felt bored because it is a 10-part documentary. It's big.
Yeah, I mean, it aired over 5 weeks here, which you asked my husband was probably the best 5 weeks of quarantine thus far. So, yeah.
I do remember Jimmy once saying to me, there was one Monday, because it kind of got released on Netflix on Mondays here. And there was one Monday where I was just exhausted. It was probably a bit hungover. And I just remember about 11 o'clock in the morning saying to Jimmy, I am so tired. I think I'm going to have to go to bed. I've never seen it. He turned around. He's like, well, you had better sort yourself out because it's episodes of Last Dance and we are watching it. I'm not fucking waiting another night. I
don't think I've ever seen Jimmy get all fired up about TV like that before.
I'm telling you, I needed a disco nap. I needed to perk myself up. It was coffee. There was a lot. I could pull myself together.
Yeah. I mean, you could have gone totally back to the 90s, popped a few no-dos, and like been on your way.
Make it a really authentic 90s
yes,
experience.
make an authentic experience. But Jason
I
Hehir.
don't know what you're talking about.
Jason Hehir is a brilliant director. He's done quite a few 30 for 30s, one about Andre the Giant, one about the Pistons. So this is not like a new space for him. I don't think anybody else did a better job on this documentary. It was just incredible.
Yeah, I agree. And I think what I loved about it as well was the way that we saw kind of this fresh-faced Michael Jordan right at the beginning, early doors, kind of picked out of a crowd.
Yeah.
And then the beginning of his kind of professional career, sort of through the early 80s, through the sort of late 80s and then the late 90s. And what became apparently clear is that it didn't really matter at what period we were watching I nearly said Michael Johnson. That's
wrong guy.
Not who we're talking about.
Not any guy.
No, I don't know who's that. It doesn't matter which Michael Jordan we were watching. This kind of monomaniacal desire to win was consistent all the way through, and his performance never dipped.
No, I mean, he was such a badass, so singularly focused, to the point of kind of being an asshole about it, right? Like everybody else really had to play to his level, which I think in turn made everybody better. Like, there's always these different thoughts about how to be a good manager, whether you're like their friend or you're like a strong authoritarian figure. And I feel like in sports, we see very strong authoritative figures be the best leaders in that kind of environment. Like Bill Belichick of the New York Patriots, he's like a world-renowned asshole, but they win all the time. Like, I think you kind of need somebody driving the team like that, but whether it be a coach or a player or whatever.
And I think what we see working really, really well is kind of Michael Jordan's necessary asshole tendencies, tied in with Phil Jackson's kind of hippie, chilled out, let's all sit in a circle and do something.
Right.
He had his teams doing yoga before yoga was even a thing. Like, he really did bring this hippie chill vibe. And then I think it was just this perfect storm of that, and then Scottie Pippen as well, and obviously later Dennis Rodman. But it's one of those magical moments in sporting history that I'm so pleased that we've now been able to see the sort of 500 hours of footage that otherwise we may never have seen.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of unprecedented that a team allows that sort of access. And, obviously it's because they're worried about like their image and things of that nature. So, it's been a while since this footage has kind of been out there. But I'm really glad it was, because I think you're right. I think we see just how well all these different personality types fit within this team, which made them a good team. Like, you had to have Michael Jordan, you had to have Scottie Pippen, you had to have Dennis Rodman, you had to have all these different, you had to have Steve Kerr, you had to have all these different components of this specific team to really win. Like, they all work together.
And maybe you even needed a Jerry Krause. Maybe all of that is or maybe they're kind of, he became that guy. I mean, Jerry Krause, this guy is like small man syndrome on steroids, right?
Yeah. Like, he wished he was on steroids.
It's not just like small man syndrome, because like he'd be a dick if he had to hang around with normal sized people. Yeah. So he's a small man that now has to hang around with these ungodly tall, athletic guys who are
super
better looking,
talented,
more talented, strong, infallible, godlike creatures. I mean, no wonder the guy's a prick.
Oh, he's such a prick. Like,
I mean, I don't want to give him a way out or an excuse, but there's got to be a link.
Right. And I mean, I'm sure he, to give him maybe a little credit, I'm sure you have to be a dick to be a general manager of a team. Like, I'm sure that job is not easy, but I don't think he had to be a dick in the way he was to some of the players. I don't think he needed, like before this last season, to kind of really say it was going to be the last season and he wasn't going to let the coach come back and he wasn't going to pay this. Like, they won in spite of that, definitely not because of it. I don't know. Or maybe it gave them a common villain. Like, they all wanted to beat him. Who knows?
And one of the things that we see as a consistent theme throughout the documentary is Michael Jordan's need to have something to win for. Like, he needs to make a villain. He needs to find somebody to go, I'm not just going to win, I'm going to beat you with such a humiliating score that I walk away feeling like you are never going to want to step on a basketball court again.
And if I can't find one, I'm going to totally make it up, because a lot of his shit was like, no, I never did that. Like, he completely made that up. And I think he knew that, but I think he also knew what would drive him. So I think he just like got a thought in his head, fuck them, to humiliate them, and like went full force at it.
Well, the thing is, the people who criticize Michael Johnson after this documentary,
Jordan.
I feel a bit like that. Jordan, why am I doing this?
I don't know.
It's 9:00 at night my time. I've had
there
a bar.
You go.
I haven't even had a drink tonight. But the people that criticize Michael Jordan for the way he's for the things that are revealed in this documentary, it's like they want to have their cake and eat it, because they wanted this guy to be an infallible, godlike basketball player. But they also want him to be this truly nice, really decent, kind guy. And I just don't believe that the two are that compatible. And I said to Jimmy, I was like, when we were watching it, how much of an asshole are you allowed to be when you're that good? And the answer is actually quite a lot of an asshole.
Absolutely. I mean, if you think about the money he brought in with the team, the money he brought into Chicago, like a winning sports team brings in a lot of revenue for cities. And I think he was allowed to be that way. However, I found it interesting because when I was a kid, I don't remember ever seeing that side of him so public. All you saw was like the smiley, happy Michael Jordan at McDonald's and wearing the Nike shoes and going to the Olympics. But I think as an adult, I really appreciate his assholeness, because he did have to be that way to win. And you can't be a super nice, chill dude and be that competitive, because I mean, Michael Jordan takes competitive to like a whole new level.
I mean, and you do see the sadness in that. Like, you do see him seeing clips of people saying, yeah, he was an asshole. And you do see, there's one point he asked for a break because he's tearing up at the idea of, the potential that his legacy might not just be the best basketball player ever to be born, but also the biggest asshole ever on the court. Like, that seems to be something that he struggles with, but also that he recognizes as a necessity. The other thing, of course, is, let's not forget, his production company was a co-producer on this thing, and everything was obviously, as Michael Jordan been, done with his complete consent. So there is a question, is this the Michael Jordan that he wants us to see? That being said, I don't think, he could have cut out a ton of shit that was really critical of him.
Absolutely. I think this documentary is fairly well balanced. I never really stepped away from any episode thinking, ooh, that was a bit heavy-handed. I think that made Michael Jordan look better than everybody else. I never stepped away from any of the 10 episodes feeling that way. I felt it was pretty on point, and I feel like it was pretty on point for most people. Like, I feel like they showed a side to me of Dennis Rodman I'd never seen before. Like, that really dedicated player. Like, I never saw that growing up. I just saw the guy getting hammered in Vegas and doing wrestling and dating Carmen Electra and marrying himself. And that's all I really remember of Dennis Rodman.
And the reality is, he's still one of the best defensive players ever to be on the court.
Absolutely.
But that's not what we remember.
No. And so, like, I think the documentary did a really good job of kind of showing all sides of everybody. Like, even Scottie Pippen, I always thought Scottie Pippen was the super nice guy that was super dedicated to the team. But in that one episode where he didn't make the winning shot and it was given to somebody else and he had a fucking tantrum on the side of the court and just sat down and wouldn't get up to play, I was like, dude, that's not fucking cool.
And I think that's the balance, right? Scottie Pippen was a nice guy. Like, he was a nicer guy. He wasn't an asshole like Michael Jordan was. I always loved him. He just always had this kind face. And I could listen to his voice all day long. But, his flaws were in his, I'm not going to say lack of commitment to the game, because obviously, that's gross simplification. But you would never have seen Michael Jordan throw a tantrum and sacrifice or risk the game because of his own ego on the court at the time. And I think that's why Jordan gets away with it, right? Because yes, he's an asshole, but he never ever doesn't bring anything but perfection to the court.
Well, he doesn't ever quit. And I feel like what the rest of the team felt was that Scotty kind of quit on them in that, in that game. And I think that lost him a lot of respect from the players. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, that was when like Michael Jordan wasn't playing. That was when he was playing baseball.
Or maybe baseball.
No, yeah, I think that was when he left and played baseball. And he was watching the game and he saw Scotty do that. And he's like, holy fuck, that was the wrong move. And it was. And I think even though Michael Jordan was a humongous asshole, he never let his team down. Like that was a huge thing for him, that was never going to happen. So I think, that's the disappointing Scottie Pippen was. He did also, Scottie Pippen felt let down by the team, right? He wasn't paid fairly. He was arguably, like, next to Michael Jordan, one of the best players of the NBA, and was making pennies on the dollar comparatively to everybody else. And so maybe he didn't feel that loyalty from management. But again, that's management, not like the dudes you're playing with. So,
I agree. And interestingly, I had forgotten that it was when Jordan was out playing baseball that Scottie Pippen did that. And I'd be willing to bet that if Jordan had been there, Scottie Pippen would never, ever have made that decision to bench him.
No way. Could you imagine what he would have had to, like, come up against in the locker room?
He would have known that is unacceptable.
He would have been in tears.
He absolutely would. I think there was loads that I really loved about it. What I really enjoyed was seeing, kind of with hindsight, the way that Jordan was able to carve such global fame out of a world that didn't have social media. He wasn't famous because he had a ton of followers on Instagram, because he'd said something contentious on Twitter. He was famous because it started from playing exceptional basketball, from being really fucking good at something. And those days now seem quite gone. It's most people are famous because they're really good at fucking social media. And actually, this guy did it before any of that was happening.
Yeah, and I think he probably benefited from that as well. Like, I feel he was able to maintain kind of a more squeaky clean persona because of the lack of social media. I mean, the media wasn't kind to him at all at the time, but it still, I don't think, ever got to the level that maybe we're seeing some basketball players, like, personal lives play out and things like that in Instagram. Because obviously basketball players are still basketball players because they play the game well, but it's that whole other persona. Like Michael Jordan did it through Nike and through endorsements, but again, that all played into a very tight image that I don't know if he could have maintained now. I mean, could you imagine Dennis Rodman on social media while he was playing? It would have been crazy.
It would have been a joy to watch. A joy to watch. But again, I think Michael Jordan was one of the first that really took kind of maintaining that squeaky clean image to a whole new level. I mean, sports players with endorsements always had to be careful.
Yeah.
But I think what this documentary shows is there was a lot going on behind the scenes. There was a whole other Michael Jordan that nobody saw. We just thought that he was the golden boy of sports.
Yeah, I think the only thing that I really remember is like the gambling stuff, which, come to find out, was kind of all bullshit anyways, and was just like bullshit stories, which I found really interesting because I wholeheartedly believed as a child that gambling had something to do with his father's murder, and that was just a bullshit story that was out there. And after watching this documentary, I felt really bad that I remembered that. Granted, I was 7 years old in the 1990 not 7. Anyways, I was like 16 when like this game was going on. I know, math on the fly, not my strong. Yeah, not my strong suit.
Fine. I got you, babe.
So I was like 17 in 1998, so I probably would have believed fucking anything. But as an adult watching this documentary, it was like, oh shit, no. Like, yes, he liked to gamble, but his issue wasn't gambling; it was being fucking competitive. Like, you even saw it. Go ahead.
He says it, doesn't he? He's like, I have a competition problem. And the thing is, it's like, even if he did have a gambling problem, how much, I mean, I'm not saying that having a gambling problem is great, but is it a problem if it's not a problem? Do you know what I mean? If he's still turning up and playing and paying his bills and whatever else he needs to do, but he's also hemorrhaging a shit ton of money on the golf course, like, how much of a problem is it?
Yeah, I mean, in my opinion, it's not a problem unless he's like betting on like sports games. Then that would be an issue, and that would be frowned.
Illegal. Yeah.
But yeah. But he wasn't doing that, and I kind of look back and be like, yeah, I don't believe that there ever was, a gambling problem.
I mean, if I was gambling $10,000 on a game of golf, then that would be a problem. But for Michael Jordan, it really isn't.
No, it'd be like you losing $1 on golf.
Well, yeah.
Like,
I mean,
just
he has like 11 billion pounds.
Yeah,
you can afford to lose a little bit here and there on some
absolutely,
sportsman's bets. We got to know a lot more about his father and obviously the issues surrounding that. And there was some tenuous links at the time between the gambling and his father's murder, but that seemed to be put to bed in this documentary. Yeah. And I really, really enjoyed the last episode. I don't know why I enjoyed this so much, but I think it was quite heavily focused on kind of Steve Kerr and his relationship with Michael Jordan, because they'd played together for a long time and they had the death of their fathers in common. Interestingly, something that they'd never spoken about. And I just really loved seeing the relationship between those two, because while Michael Jordan had obviously this kind of innate God-given talent, which he did work hard, but he was just always going to have this amazing sort of gift. Steve Kerr talks a lot about how actually he was just a grafter. Like, he had the height and he had some ability, but actually it was just hard fucking graft for him. And I really loved watching the way that he earned the respect of Michael Jordan, that Michael Jordan willingly gave it to him, because it wasn't necessarily a player that Michael Jordan would have respected otherwise.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you.
But it was lovely to see, and it was lovely to see him at the end kind of ripping into Michael Jordan, going, well, obviously I had to save him again. It's really awkward, but I'm here, and, all of that. I have a question for you. Because obviously this is called The Last Dance, all about the 97-98 season, because Jerry Krause had decided this was going to be Phil Jackson's last season, and Jordan wouldn't play under anybody else. So it was kind of a given that this phenomenal team would break up after 6 championship wins. At the time, were people as mystified about why this was happening, or was it quite clear that Jerry Krause was pulling strings, or was that what the fuck is going on?
I mean, I think all the fans were like, what the fuck is going on? Because you've got a winning team. Like, you don't typically see a winning team being kind of taken apart to rebuild. You'll see it eventually, because teams do have to rebuild. People get hurt, people get old, people retire, and all that kind of stuff. But I don't remember people being like, "Oh yeah, that makes loads of sense. Of course you would stop playing now." Like, they're on a winning streak. I think it was pretty baffling. I think most people didn't understand what Jerry Krause was doing. I don't know if Jerry Krause understood what he was doing, but yeah.
Interesting, because we didn't get that. I don't think we got that much context in the UK. Like, we got the highlights and the headlines, but in terms of the ins and outs of the politics, it wasn't basketball wasn't covered.
No, I think I'd have to ask my husband to get like the real facts on that one, because again, I was a 17-year-old girl and really not paying too close attention to sports politics at the time. I definitely pay more attention now because I'm the lone female in the house of men who all love sports. So we hear about it.
By sports.
I am.
Whereas I'm the opposite. I am the only person who's interested in sports in my household. Jimmy doesn't understand the rules of feetball, as he calls it, and leaves all of that up to me. But that aside, he fucking loved this documentary.
Yeah.
And I think if you haven't seen it because you think that it's not for you or you're not interested, I guarantee that you will enjoy it. It's so beautifully crafted. And even just watching these guys do their thing, there's no other sport that is as beautifully athletic as basketball.
No, and I mean, I think you definitely see that when Jordan takes time off to do baseball, and his trainer's like, baseball's a whole different type of body. We're going to have to do all this. And then when he went back to basketball, his trainer's like, shit, well, now we got to like do all this stuff to get your body like back in shape, because it's a lot of running. It's a lot of endurance. It's a lot of precision. It's very hard on your body. It's beautiful. It's beautiful to watch in this documentary. Even if you're a lot like me, a lot of the time I was just watching being like, if I was Michael Jordan's wife, I'd be so fucking pissed all the time. You're all alone. You would be all alone all the time. I mean, you go from like the grueling schedule of basketball to the grueling schedule of baseball, even just minor league, then back to basketball because you thought he was going to be retired. I know that, I'm sure she had help and all that kind of stuff, but you definitely see kind of why their marriage didn't necessarily work out. And, I think it'd be really hard to be married to someone that competitive all the time.
100%. In fact, I mean, I'm married to somebody who's away a lot, and that's hard, but to be married to somebody who's away a lot and that competitive would be exhausting. Interestingly, his kids really enjoyed it as well. They were saying that it was the first chance they'd ever had to really see the phenomenon that was Michael Jordan, because they were obviously fairly young. But I remember what his son said in an interview, said, well, why? I asked my dad, like, why didn't you ever tell me? And my dad just said, how do you tell somebody that that's who you are? Like, how do you say that? Do you go, by the way, I'm just the world, like I'm the world.
I'm Michael Jordan.
Basketball. I'm Michael Jordan.
You better recognize, little kid.
Yeah, get on board.
Yeah.
But it was just, I mean, it is a really, truly inspiring documentary.
It is. It's a great watch. It's definitely worth your time. The personalities involved are, like I said earlier, are just crazy. And it's really nice to see kind of how they all work together and how they bounce off each other. And I think it was nice to see how some of the things, because there's a lot of times when production shows Michael Jordan in the documentary, what other people have kind of said about him. And I thought that was really interesting. Like a lot of the old Pistons players or rival team members, what they would say playing against Michael Jordan was like. And he was just like, yeah, I was an asshole, or yep, I fucking hated him. Like it was no big deal. Well,
I think there are still some elements of him being kind of an asshole. Like he says quite clearly, is it Isaiah Thomas? Is that his name? He says very clearly, I had absolutely no part to play in him being left off the Olympic team. I never mentioned his name. And then I think he's recently been on a podcast. He hasn't, but a podcast has recently got recorded footage of Jordan saying, I'm not going to play if Isaiah's on the team. Ooh. And to be fair, the coach or whoever's selecting is like, I don't want him on the team anyway, so it's not going to happen. So it's not like it was an influenced decision, but he made his point very clear.
Yeah, Isaiah Thomas was very widely hated in the NBA. Like, he was a gigantic asshole as well, but I don't think he had the same kind of talent to back up this. Yeah. But I mean, sports back then was pretty brutal. Like, I sometimes wonder if some of our big stars right now in basketball, like LeBron James, I don't know how, I think maybe LeBron could handle it, but there's another guy from the Golden State Warriors. I've totally forgotten his name. I'm sure all of you are screaming at me right now, but I don't know if they'd be able to play in such a very physically competitive, aggressive game, because I feel like the game has kind of changed a little bit. It's not as brutal. Like there's no team that's just fouling everybody like the Pistons were, or getting so aggressive and things like that. You just don't really see that anymore. I sometimes think that's a shame. I think that's part of sports I really enjoy.
I think you see that sports wide. Like I don't think football's as dirty as it used to be. No. And when I say football, I mean soccer. Yeah. I don't think there's no Maradonas. There's there's none of these really dirty players anymore. And as much as it kind of questions the whole sportsmanship team, there is a real joy in seeing that kind of passion and that kind of physicality. But also maybe it comes back to the social media thing. They just can't get away with anything. They have to be squeaky, squeaky clean.
It's Steph Curry. That was the name I was trying to remember. It just came to me.
There it is.
Steph Curry.
Well, listen, I think we should sort of wrap it up there. That is hands down one of my favorite documentaries. It's knocked Tiger King right off the top spot for me.
Ooh, those are strong words.
I know.
I think I like the two of them for very different reasons. So they're kind of tied for me because I feel like they're just very different shows.
Yeah. I mean, it's a bit like the difference between kind of your Man Booker Prize and your E.L. James 50 Shades of Grey. It's a bit like that.
100%.
You love them both for different reasons, and once you start reading, you don't want to stop. But but one's sort of kind of a bit
more highbrow.
More highbrow.
More highbrow than the other.
But yet still fucking brilliant.
Absolutely. So go check it out if you haven't. I don't know when the release date in the US will be for Netflix, but I'm sure it's coming soon. But they are re-airing The Last Dance. So check your DVRs and set it to record and catch up. And then if you're in the UK, just watch it on Netflix.
Yeah, do that. It's all there ready and waiting for you. Remember, if you want more amazing content like this, then please head over to patreon.com/tvmyhusbandhates. We are doing happy dances every time we get a new Patreon patron.
Yes, right? A patron.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it really does help us keep this going. So we'd be really, really grateful if you could. But in the meantime, have a great week. And remember,
smart people watch reality TV too. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Please subscribe, rate, and review TV My Husband Hates wherever you listen to your podcast. You can also follow us on Facebook and Instagram at TV My Husband Hates and join the Facebook group to keep the conversation going when the podcast ends. If Twitter's your thing, you'll find us at TV Husbands Hate. Theme music and production for TV My Husband Hates is by Jimmy Sims.